This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
Welcome in, everybody. This is the Falcons Podcast. This is the Aftermath edition, not the gut reaction, which is yesterday, which can be a little more emotional. But if you've watched me more than once, you know I can get a little emotional when we start talking about these things. And I see some of the wasted opportunity, the wasted money, the continually banging your head against bad decisions. That makes me mad. There's a lot of that going around right now in Falcons Nation. So first off, I want to say thank you to all the members on YouTube. If you're not a member, give it a shot. See what you think. It helps out a lot. We'll also want to talk a little bit about yesterday's game. I'm sure there will be discussions about possible coaching candidates. I want to talk about the possible turnarounds. You know, it's the fans' fault for being impatient. They're out there. Trust me, they're out there. They're in my mentions every once in a while. They're in my comments. If the fans would just have a little patience and not turn things over every 2 years, we wouldn't have these problems. We'll talk about that as well. I want to hit on special teams again, just to emphasize how bad it's been. I want to talk about Raheem Morris becoming a little snippy. I think he's feeling the heat a little bit, and his demeanor yesterday was not excellent, so to speak. But first off, let's say hello to some folks that have come in before we even got started and gotten the conversation going on YouTube. And Rusty says, Ray McLeod took to Twitter yesterday and retweeted a quote that said, Raheem lost the locker room when he fired Ike Hilliard. A 35-point loss to Seattle should have Raheem fired next Monday. Yeah, and, you know, I don't know that for sure. What I have said, Rusty, is I saw a team that didn't seem as interested yesterday in the cold, dreary, 35-degree sludge on that hard turf in New Jersey. I will almost always say New Jersey when I'm talking about the Jets of the Giants and where they are, especially, you know, you got people give the Braves heck for playing, you know, on the north end of the perimeter, the Cobb County, where they actually do have an Atlanta address. Like, the Giants and the Jets aren't even in the same damn state, for God's sakes. How about the Santa Clara 49ers? Anyway, just one of my own little personal things there. They didn't look as interested yesterday, you know, flat out. And that happens game to game, but when you're in the middle of a season like this, it definitely shows up for sure. And Rusty thinks, it's going to be ugly. The Seahawks are good. And we'll come back to the Seahawks too. Coming into Wednesday, we'll do more of a look at the Seahawks, but they're part of that second-year coach crowd also that I want to talk to. Keith Robbins, thanks for being a member. He said, my friend, he says, I'm at a loss for words. John Harrell says, I nominate Scott to be the next GM. Hire me as the head coach. We'll pick the best place for Madden and see what happens. I'm obsessive compulsive to a fault. If I ever was a lawyer, I argue all the time in my head. I have these arguments in my head. I had one of these yesterday, John, with these people that come into the comments and say, you know, oh, do you think you could do better? Well, I wouldn't do worse. Or, you know, I'm critical of these people. I am. That's my job. If I were to run a time machine back 40 years and start over, I would know the path to take to be a general manager. I wasn't on that path. I'd love to be a general manager. It's not going to happen for me in this lifetime. That's okay. But I've carved out a nice living watching football, talking about football, analyzing football. And part of what goes with being a general manager is being criticized by people like me. And if I was in a position making millions of dollars to make these decisions, I know that comes with the territory. Coaches and general managers are well compensated. And if you want to put me in the position to make millions of dollars and I fail and you want to call me an idiot, I'm here for it, John. I'm here for it. Russ Irving, I fully endorse the regime change. Fontenot and Morris have to go, but I'm not sure how enthusiastic we should be if Rich McKay isn't also given his marching orders. I think Rich will stay part of the organization because he does stuff with Atlanta United also. But, you talk about why have we seen him pop up more recently? Why is he on, I'll call it Z93 till I die. Apologies if you're younger than 40. Z93 was what 92.9 the game used to be. It was called Z93 when I was growing up and actually listening to FM radio. Why is he doing those radio shots? Why is he in just as a nice trip to Munich, to Berlin to check out? I'd go on that trip if I could. Sure. I don't blame him for that, but we don't want Rich McKay involved in this. That's for sure. Hire yourself somebody new, a new voice to run things, Arthur, and turn it over. Curtis, thank you for the super chat. Coming in big. Also a member supporting the show. He says, good morning, Scott and Falcons Nation. That's all y'all from Curtis. I just don't know what to say about this team anymore. Right now, I just want the season to be over. Been a fan since the late 80s, and I've seen some lows with this team, but this is worse. Yeah, the 80s were bad. They were really bad because this team's different in the sense that Arthur Blank tries, but he fails. He's put a ton of money into this team. They've had pretty good draft picks. It's a legitimate franchise. While it's the winning and some of the things they've done with the buddy system here has set the team back. There was no hope. There was just no hope in the 80s under the Smiths. They were going to draft players, and if they happened to hit on players, they were going to leave in free agency. And it was 4-12, 4-12, 5-11, 4-12. The 80s were awful for Atlanta sports, but it helped shape why I do this for a living. I started watching the draft. I started watching the minor league baseball. I started watching, other teams and seeing how they were doing things. But it is, Curtis. It's tough. And let's get into this here real quick because there's some other things I want to talk about. I want to say hello to Lance, who came in with a super too. So let me come back into this as far as the turnover goes. That's what people worry about, talk about, going to lose this player or going to lose this draft pick, blah, blah, blah. Guys, getting the regime right is so much more important than any of that nonsense. I had this argument on Broncos for Breakfast before they hired Sean Payton, and so many people didn't want to give up the 26th overall pick to trade to Sean Payton for Sean Payton. I'm like, guys, there's maybe a handful of draft picks in the history of this game that are worth more than the right coaching staff. Period. What difference does it make if you've got a high pick? If you've got people who don't know how to coach, you're losing with them anyway. So who cares? I mean, that's the extreme view of things. I get it, but it's so important, Curtis, to get it right, and you can't just stay in a bad relationship. Lance, thank you for the super coming in. Green, Lance Render. Is it Rendar? Render. Falcons choose to keep the old special teams guys versus young depth at wide receiver, defensive back, like Sills and Hodge and Agnew and Franks. No one even to watch and develop in the final weeks. I don't know. James Pierce is on fire. Was that 4 sacks in a row? 4 games in a row? If he finishes with 5 more and he knocks on double digits, should be rookie of the year. And Jalen Walker's been playing great. There's basically a 3-man rotation there with him and those two and Leonard Floyd. And then Arnold Ebiketie is kind of getting some scraps. Ebiketie's gone. I'll be shocked if he's back. He is easily 4th in this rotation. And going back to the Braylon Trice crowd, where was Braylon Trice going to play? Where was he going to play in this? Arnold Ebiketie can't get on the field. Where was Braylon Trice going to play? Braylon Trice, God willing he gets healthy, will replace the snaps from either Arnold Ebiketie, who got about a quarter of the snaps yesterday, or Leonard Floyd, who they were in about a 50% rotation. It was like 50-50-50 across 3 guys yesterday. So that's what you're hoping for. Braylon Trice comes back and he can get into the back end of the edge rotation, but He wasn't going to play this year. He wasn't going to beat any of those guys out. You're not going to draft two guys and not play them, usually. I mean, 2024 notwithstanding. But Agnew, what a waste of a spot that was. Getting into some dominating numbers here. The Falcons found a way to dominate and lose again. And I mean, you wonder how quickly can this turn around. When you see games like this again, you think this can be turned around with the right people quick. And what do I mean by games like this again? Let's look at the stats from yesterday. The Falcons won first downs, big, 25-16. They won total yards, big, almost 400 to 269. They won passing. They were more efficient passing. They had more yards per pass, more yards total. They won passing. They won rushing, big, 32-28. Penalties, big. They won this one big. They only were penalized one time yesterday. It was a pass interference for 27 yards. It was costly, but the Jets had 9 penalties for 59 yards. They won it big. They won time of possession. They lost the turnover battle, which was just 1-0 is not a crusher, but they did lose the turnover battle. And then most importantly, where they are getting whipped every week is on third downs. 33%. That's 29th in the NFL. They were 4 of 12 again yesterday. And I think we saw it to close out the game after they scored. After they scored I'm forgetting exactly how this went, honestly. After they scored their touchdown and they got the ball back, they actually got it back with 2 chances to score under 2 minutes. They go 3 and out. They can't get a first down. So 4 of 12 on third down. They started the game 0 for 4 on third down. There was 75 seconds left in this first half before they converted a third down. That's awful. Those are game-losing things. But they win all those other things and still find a way to lose. Remember the Patriots game? The first time in 60 years to be +2 in turnovers, +5 in sacks, and lose. Previous teams were 44-0, except the Atlanta Exceptions. That's the new name for this team. It's not the Atlanta Falcons. It's the Atlanta Exceptions. If there's a negative stat to be had, every team has won except it's going to be the Falcons. We all know it. It's the way it's been for 60 years now. The Atlanta Exceptions. So it happened again. Rio, good to see you. Thanks for coming in. I know you check in on both Facebook and YouTube and coming in hot with a super chat. Thank you, my friend. He says, Ulbrich is getting off the hook with fans. Say what you will about the offense, but the defense has blown leads several times this season. And this is the worst special teams unit I've ever seen. Yeah, Rio, I get it. And I think let's go back to expectations, okay? And a lot of this happens, a lot of your perception on is like your first impressions. The defense started out really hot, so he started off really high. But what were the expectations for this defense coming in? Can you improve from one of the bottom 3 units in the NFL to even average? Can Ulbrich and some of the investments that they've made, can this team become an average defensive unit? That's where they are. They're not top 5. They're really not even top 10 anymore. They are in some categories, and they're more fun to watch. But I think overall, Ulbrich has done a good job improving this defense. Is he where the perception was with them after 6 weeks, 7 weeks? No, it's not a top 5 unit. It's 15, which is a massive improvement. The problem was you had the number 6 offense last year in total yards, number 13 or so in scoring, and they've fallen off a cliff. Part of it's injuries. Part of it's Zach Robinson. Part of it's a first-year starting quarterback. Part of it's personnel and culture. Ray McLeod falls off a cliff. Darnell Mooney's hurt, never really comes back. Drake London's getting the hell beat out of him. And Kyle Pitts is not the guy that you drafted him to be. But they've gone from 13th in scoring and number 6 in offense. They were number 2 in yards after like 6 games. 20. So where are they in scoring after all this time? Let me see where they are now in scoring. Let's see. let's go to scorers, NFL stats, season leaders. Let's switch to team, see if they have updated it for offensive leaders. And if I click on points per game, I start at the bottom and start working my way back up. And after 12 games, that's right, they're 4-8. So they put this in here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 32 minus 7 is 25. You add 1 to get what place they're in. They're in 26th. So they have improved to the 26th because they were lower than that. Carolina is actually coming up because they were down like at 15 points when the Falcons played them. They're at 19 now. They're playing better. Falcons are 26th in scoring, now behind, 0.2 of a point behind the New York Jets, who outscored them by 3 points yesterday. 26. So is Ulbrich off the hook? Ulbrich has improved this defense. That is a good thing to me. Does he have this unit as a top 5 unit? No, it's not. My expectations weren't that it was going to be a top 5 unit. And frankly, Rio, I look at scoring and I look at some of the situations that this team's put in. If they had any special teams at all, and if they weren't constantly going 3 and out, 4 of 12 on third down conversions, and they were getting some help from the offense, the defense would be playing better. The defense would have better numbers too. Special teams fumble, they're 7 points. The kickoff return, I think they held when I wrote that up. I think they held and kicked a field goal there. I don't remember for sure. There's 3 points. That's 10 points at the feet of the special teams unit. 16-yard return to the 50-yard line with the game on the line. That's 3 more points. That's special teams. Now, do you want your defense to step up? Yeah, you do. You'd like them to, but they can't constantly do it. This is an offensive league, y'all. Every rule change that has happened in the last 50 years has gone to benefit the offense. It is easier to close a game now on offense than it is to shut a team down on defense. Most teams now. I mean, I know we get our tunnel vision, we watch our own teams, but I would rather, if I'm most NFL teams, I'd rather have the ball down 2 with 90 seconds left than have a 2-point lead and the other team with the ball with 90 seconds left, starting on the 25-yard line. That's the way. It's just the way it is these days. So I think Ulbrich has done a good job. I don't think this is a top 5 defense. Both things can be true, Rio. So off the hook, just again, it's relative. It's relative in there. Let me come back into some of the comments here. Cash Bag Beats, good to see you. I know you're here. Sam Klontz, good morning. He says, only thing to look forward to is Jalen Walker or James Pierce winning Defensive Rookie of the Year or finish 2 and 3 while they split the vote in the South. But I think I'm excited about these two players. I got into this really when I was 15 years old, 1988. Andre Bruce is number 1 overall, and then the Falcons have the first pick in the second round. They took Marcus Cotton, 2 outside linebackers. That was 2 edge rushers. Andre Bruce turned into a serviceable NFL player, 11 years in the NFL, obviously never lived up to the number 1 standing. And Marcus Cotton, I saw him. I was watching a reel on Instagram of Deion Sanders in his first game. He returns a punt for a touchdown, and one of the first guys to greet him was Marcus Cotton. I'm like, hey, I know that guy's Marcus Cotton. Remember him? So this is different. These guys are better. Jalen Walker and James Pierce, they're better. Terry says, good morning, Atlanta. And Coach Scott, thank you. Appreciate it. Let me see here. JLT says, if we all know the players are better than the results we are getting, the players know it and are sick of it. No way the locker room is still behind Raheem. And JLT, I've said that I don't think they've been behind Zach Robinson for a while. That's the one where I feel like that one's changed. Matt Service, thank you for being a member. He says, good morning, Scott. Time to clean house. It's getting there. It is. It's getting there for sure. Let's talk about that here real quick. Because there's 2 things I want to hit on. There's a narrative I want to dispel. Well, there's 2 narratives I want to dispel here. One of them is the graphics go around a lot of the Falcons interviewed these guys and then they settled on Raheem Morris. What a disaster. Mike Vrabel, Patriots, 10-2. Ben Johnson, Bears, 9-3. Mike McDonald, Seahawks, 9-3. Jim Harbaugh, Chargers, 8-4. Those are either second year or first year coaches. And they're like, oh, and then they hired this guy when they interviewed all these guys. That doesn't mean they were going to get any of those guys. Those guys do the interview circus. They interviewed with a bunch of teams. The bigger question and the bigger concern is why? Why were they never really an option for any of those guys, except Mike McDonald? I think, Georgia boy. He's from, I think he's from Peachtree City or Gwinnett, somewhere around the extended metro Atlanta area. That could have happened, I think. But the bigger question isn't necessarily, oh, you picked Raheem Morris over these guys. No, you didn't. You didn't. Harbaugh was always going to LA. He wanted to be with Herbert and out in LA with the Chargers. Vrabel, a lot of history up there going up to the Patriots. Okay, that's not a big understanding. Nobody hired Ben Johnson. He went back to Detroit. So you didn't choose Raheem Morris over all of these guys. They choose other people over you. They chose not to come to Atlanta. That's the question you should be asking. Why? Why? Because of the losing culture of this team? Because they didn't want to work for Rich McKay? Because they weren't going to have whatever they needed to come here? That's the question you need to ask. Why? Why did they interview and not be able to get any of these guys? Not that they chose. That's BS. Didn't work like that. They asked a bunch of people out and got turned down and settled on their fifth or sixth choice, possibly. Okay, why? Because I need a haircut? Do I smell bad? What is it that I got turned down and had to go with, an old ex from another school who, didn't have prom that night and did me a favor. She didn't have a date either. Why? You know what? In the second year coaches, I just reeled off those numbers because there's a lot of people that say, well, what can you expect if we start all over? We're starting from scratch. Second year coaches, Mike Vrabel's 10-2. Ben Johnson's 9-3. He's a first year coach with the Bears in a very similar situation to what the Falcons are. Talent, right? Can't put it all together. 9-3. Had a really good win. Mike McDonald, 9-3. Pretty good program up there in Seattle. Jim Harbaugh, 8-4. Battled some brutal injuries. And 9-4. 8-4. And I'll tell you what, of the second year guys, because he was hired quickly, and I don't think he even really went through the process that much, that we don't talk about among this group because he wasn't interviewed, so it doesn't fit that narrative. That's fine. But as far as the turnaround goes, how about Dave Canales, the Carolina Panthers? Let's flash back 23 months ago during this hiring process. Who's in a better situation? You got a ton of money. You got a nice young core, a bunch of high draft picks with the Atlanta Falcons, or you got a team that just spent a load on Bryce Young, an owner that isn't all that popular. Who was the better job 2 years ago, the Carolina Panthers or the Atlanta Falcons? I think most people, even outside of Atlanta, would say that the Atlanta Falcons were probably the better situation. Dave Canales has that team 7-6, and they had a spectacular win. So for those of y'all who are afraid that, and blaming the fans on this is just obnoxious. It's the fans' fault. If the Falcons had better fans, they were more patient. Come on. It's not the fans' fault. It's not. It can be turned around. Again, West, what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 teams with winning records in their second or first year. 10-2, 9-3, 9-3, 8-4, 7-6. If I offered you 9-3, if you in 2027, would you take it? If I said you got to fire Raheem Morris and clean house, even those of you that want to be patient, because you're not getting there with this staff, you're just not. Is how I feel about this. Let's say hello to some more folks. Chris, good to see you, says there's no way we should have been so bad this season. Can we get a GM and head coach that actually know what they're doing? I'm sick of all of them except Ulbrich. Terry took too long to figure out how to draft. Yeah, and then the Kirk Cousins thing. That hurt, and again, let's remember the plan all along was to have Kirk Cousins as a starter this year. That was the plan. What's your plan? They were broke. They didn't have any money coming into this cycle. They signed a couple of cheap free agents, including a linebacker who's been really good. Who else did they get? Jamal Agnew, but he was $1.2 million. Jordan Fuller for pennies on the dollar. And then Leonard Floyd's been good. Those were their big ticket free agents this year. They were broke. That was the plan for 2025. Second year, we're going to go all in, except we're not, because we're not going to draft anybody that can help in 2024, but they can be ready in 2025. That was the plan. All these guys, Rook, Dorless, Trice, they're going to, I'm forgetting somebody. Rook, Dorless, there's one more in there that I felt like should have helped. Not Bertrand necessarily. I mean, Penix was supposed to be coming next year. And, we'll be up against the cap. But that's okay, because that's our year. 2025 is going to be our year. Our second year, Kirk Cousins, and he can go out in a blaze of glory. They're 4-8. And they're 4-8. You cannot rebuild. You cannot rebuild and go for it at the same time. You just can't do it. There's too many resources. There's not enough resources. There's too many restrictions placed on you. He kept Jimmy Lake too long. That's a cool picture you've got in your background. How the hell does a special teams coordinator have a job in week 12? All right. I actually have this queued up here, so I want to get into this. The special teams this year, they are 30th in yards per punt return. They are 32nd in yards per kick return. So basically, and we saw it yesterday after Agnew fumbled, I think his next two punts were -3 yards total on his next two punt returns. So in punt returns, they are 30th in yards per punt return. Remember, Avery Williams led the NFL at 16.9 3 years ago before he hurt his knee. It was a strength of this team. Hidden yards, y'all, especially when you got kickers kicking 56-yard field goals on the reg. And 32nd in kick return. Do y'all remember how Raheem Morris was talking up Agnew coming in? 32nd. For those of y'all counting at home, that's DFL. That's dead freaking last in kick return. They're 25th in field goal percentage. 25th. What about the other side of things? In kick coverage, last. 32nd. After an 83-yard kick might have given them an extra yard and a half, they are now last in the NFL in kick return coverage. Last. Why do we kick it out of bounds every time or kick it through the end zone every time except the last one? Because they are last. DFL. They're 9th in punt. I mentioned yesterday, I think Bradley Pinion's done a pretty good job this year punting the ball, directional punts and returns, hang time, et cetera, et cetera. They're 9th in punt return against, so in punt coverage. Well, it's been a problem recently. I saw poor Taryn put that out in a tweet. It's like it's been a problem recently, and she got shillelagh'd in the comments recently. So in 2024, the kick return average was actually kick returns against was 13th, not awful. Punt return against last. It was last. They were 19th in punt returns, 24th in kick returns, and 31st in field goal percentage. That's the legacy. They were bad last year. They were bottom quarter. They're last this year in special teams. They're the last. Why? It's insanity. I don't understand it. So it finally came up yesterday in the press conferences. And Raheem Morris was asked if he would, after would you make a change as special teams coordinator? This is what he had to say.
Making a change with your coordinator, a possibility. But You love to get rid of people today, right? We don't make emotional decisions. We know that. We won't talk about those things. We never do that. That's not our code. That's not our ethics. That's not who we are. That's not what we are. It's not our decision. That's not what we do today.
We don't make emotional decisions. That's fine. And again, he's being snippy because he's feeling the heat and his team stinks and he's under a lot of negativity surrounding him. When people get emotional, try and listen to what they say, not how they say it. How he said it was bad. It was, again, the more that the Falcons coaches have talked in the last month, the worse they've sounded. He's not going to fire a guy in a press conference. The better way to say that was, we're all accountable. Get into coach speak. That's why you've got them. The old Bull Durham thing. You got to learn your cliches. You got to love them. They're your friends. We're all accountable. We'll take a look at everything. From me to, and I would say, who's the best player on this team, to Bijan Robinson, to Marquise Williams, to everybody. We're all accountable. And if we're not doing the job, we know this business is NFL. It's not for long. Okay. But it came off again horribly as Raheem started getting a little snippy. On this stuff. Curtis coming back in. Appreciate it. He says, as long as his team continues to operate with a bunch of people making decisions instead of letting a more capable coach make the football decisions, we're never going to change. This goes back into Curtis is talking about, the collaboration. We always hear about this is a collaboration. Well, when you can blame the collaboration, then no one's ever to blame. We made these decisions together, so it's not my fault. We all did it. So, there's safety in numbers, right? And I agree 100%, Curtis. I don't want a collaboration when it comes to football decisions. I want a dictatorship, and I want someone to be the big dick. Who's the big dick in this dictatorship? You got to have that. You get the right person to do that. I saw Nick Saban's. I saw a reel yesterday. This was his 2015 coaching staff. It was Kirby Smart, Lane Kiffin, Charlie Weiss Jr., the guy who's coaching now at Oregon and doing well. I mean, it was a who's who of stuff. Saban would rehabilitate. He'd do a favor for his agents, the shared agent, and rehabilitate guys who would come by. Why? Because Nick Saban's in charge. There's no question who's in charge and who's making the decisions. None. Zero. It's a dictatorship. Hopefully, I'm talking about how you run a football franchise, YouTube, not politics here. So hopefully they don't flag me for politics on this. Sean Payton's the same way. Sean Payton's not afraid to bring in a former head coach as his defensive coordinator because he's in charge. He's been empowered by the ownership, and he's got an ego the size of Colorado. He's in charge. So yes, Curtis, the collaboration has to die. It has to. You need somebody in charge, and you get fans bickering at one another. Well, that's not Terry's fault. That was the coach who saw, or it was Arthur Blank who decided to give Kirk Cousins $100 million and draft a quarterback. That was the owner that did that. That wasn't Terry Fontenot's fault. Then what do I need Terry Fontenot for? His magnificent salary cap arrangements? Cut Matt Ryan and take on a record dead cap number. There you go. Done. Fixed. What do I need Terry for? I can lose just as much without him as I can with him. So yes, Curtis, I agree with you 100% on this. Austin says this is it's just a disaster of a staff. One of the worst coaching staffs I've ever seen at pro level. And I think it's at the coordinators because, there's some guys on the staff. I think Ledford's great. I think Jerry Gray's done a good job with the defensive backs. Ledford's offensive line coach, I think he's been fantastic. I think Nate Ollie on the defensive line has done a good job this year. I think Ulbrich has been okay. But when you're both your coordinator, when you're a head coach who's not involved in calling plays and both your coordinators are rookies who fail miserably, you're done. You're done. And I've said it a zillion times. Head coaches can usually sacrifice their coordinators once. Usually happens at the same time. But you usually get one cycle, I guess I should say, where you can sacrifice a coordinator. Last year was Jimmy Lake. I don't think you get to do it again with Zach Robinson and keep your job. I don't think so. I don't think you're going to be able to, well, if we just get an offensive coordinator, we'll be all right. Well, what happens when he's gone? Do I trust this group to hire another one? Do I trust Raheem to hire another offensive coordinator? And who's going to want to come be the offensive coordinator of this team next year? Hell no. Offensive coordinator is a one-year job. If you want me to come coach this team, that's fine. Give me a 5-year contract and, $40 million, $50 million guaranteed. Okay. And you better be patient on that. That's how this happens. And I want a big say in who's going to be the general manager. If I'm not the general manager. So, that's how that happens. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom and kind of start working my way up, because I know there's some people that have come in and I'm 20 minutes behind on comments as I'm doing this. Big Buck 2596. Thanks for being a member. I see the bird in your chat. He says, again, we need a head coach and a GM. I use dictatorship. He used and look at Chicago. Both guys are that way, and they also lead their respective divisions. And Big Buck, I've said 100 times, and I'll say it until the day I die. It's why I hate politicians. Now I'm really going to get flagged by YouTube. I don't mind a hypocrite. I mean, it's the other way around. Apologies. And actually, my buddy Chad is in a punk band. I'm like, I'm going to write this song for you. You put the music to it. I'll write the lyrics. I don't mind an a-hole. I can't stand a hypocrite. So I was just talking about Nick Saban. Nick Saban's not somebody, and he's come off a lot better here recently, but, in his prime at Alabama, he's not somebody that you'd want to like sit down and have, drinks with, to sit down and, be golfing buddies for 4 hours. Raheem Morris would be awesome for that. But by God, I want him coaching my football team. I'm not a fan of Sean Payton, the person. I'd take him as a head coach. I pushed hard for him for the Broncos when I was doing that show. Smith has the big question here. Do you think Rich McKay gets fired also? No. Reassigned, I think, would be how you'd put it in corporate terms. Because I think he'll still do some things with Atlanta United. And didn't they just start a lacrosse team or something as well? So I think he'll still be involved in Arthur Blank Properties, but they've got to bring in somebody and give them the keys. They've got to. They've got to bring in somebody and give them the keys. And Corey says Terry can stay, but he stays at the pro personnel lead, not the general manager. Yeah, I think for the most part, he's done a fantastic job with his free agents. The first time he got to spend any money, not even the first time, but getting 7 wins in that 2022 season with a bunch of scraps, guys coming off of the Chicago Bears, and who's the other team the Falcons were so fond of getting players from? Oh, the Titans, with Arthur Smith, getting Chicago Bears and Tennessee Titans leftovers and winning 7 games. Thought they did a fantastic job of finding guys who could play for the minimum on 1-year deals and do a job, especially down in the defensive line. Then in 2023, they had some money for the first time. Quarterback decision, again, dooms that team. But you got Calais Campbell, hit, played well. Bud Dupree on a cheap deal, hit, played well. Caden Ellis has been a hit. Jesse Bates has been a hit. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm forgetting somebody in there. David Onyemata played really well. Another hit on that. So, 5 guys that you plugged into your defense as starters, and they were all hits. Come to this year, Leonard Floyd. He's been an improvement for the same money, as basically the same money, but not overly expensive. May have been a little bit more money than Lorenzo Carter, but he's on 10, I think, on 10 million. Been really good. Played well yesterday. Divine Diablo, been really good. Jamal Agnew was a miss, $1.2 million with no guaranteed money. So, okay. Thanks, Smitty, for reposting the stream. Smitty did. So this isn't Smitty, this is Smith. So, okay. And you reposted the stream, so thank you. I certainly appreciate it. And Jimmy says it was a women's soccer team that got it. So NWSL, I think, is what it is. And, the report came out a couple of weeks ago that the 2 guys that really pushed for Raheem Morris, probably over Bill Belichick, helped tilt the scales there after Robert Kraft and Arthur Blank talked, and Robert Kraft gave what's the opposite of a recommendation? submarined him, said, do not hire that guy. You don't want him. And it was reported, it was Ari Mayroff reported that it was Terry Fontenot and Rich McKay who pushed for Morris. There you go. There's a final straw. Again, I can't imagine going into an interview and saying, okay, we're not going to win for 5 years. Hire me. I can't imagine that. So why should anybody be surprised if a man is fired after 5 straight losing seasons? I wouldn't have gotten that job, so why should I keep it? That's the question I ask on that. And people say, well, this isn't his fault. That isn't his fault. Then what do I need him for then, besides being a scapegoat? Ryan Day or Kurt Cignetti. Is Cignetti at Indiana coaching candidates? I know that money's not really an object when you're dealing with billions like these guys are. I'm not. I'd be more interested in what Cignetti could do, if I'm not mistaken. If he is the Indiana guy, I'm not nearly as into college football as I used to be. Apologies. And Ryan Day's at Ohio State. Guys at massive programs who can out-recruit you to win, I'm not as interested in. They out-talent players, and that's okay. That's the game in college football. They out-talent guys. Give me the MAC guy where everybody has the same resources who's putting up 500 yards of offense. Who's that guy? I want to look where you actually have to coach, because I can out-talent myself, to 9 wins. Ask Steve Sarkisian. I can out-talent myself to 9-10 wins in college football on that. Ski has a good question. He says, how do you feel about trading for Mike Tomlin or the Vikings head coach? I'd take either one of them. That seems strange that the Vikings would be on the block there. They've had some quarterback problems of their own this year and gone through some personnel losses as well. And I'm not trading for Mike Tomlin. I would take Mike Tomlin in a hurry. And why would Mike Tomlin do that? Just fire me. That whole thing seems strange to me with, because Nick texted me yesterday. He's like, there's some talk that it would take a first-round pick for Mike Tomlin and a, possibly a third or something like this. I'm like, why would Mike Tomlin, that you're talking about moving on, then move on? Why? If I'm Mike Tomlin, I don't want to go to the Atlanta Falcons for a first-round pick when they already don't have a first-round pick and handicap myself to try and win at my new place. That doesn't make any sense to me. Fire me. You don't want me anymore, then fire me. So I would take Mike Tomlin in a heartbeat. You want to talk about culture change? Yes, please. I'd take the Steelers' way. I think the Falcons actually have more resources and spend more money but the Steelers have much more of a winning culture and are more attractive typically to free agents. That could change with Mike Tomlin. There's no reason why, the city of Atlanta shouldn't be a destination for free agents. I've said it more with the Hawks. Why don't we have Tyler Perry down on the court side becoming the new Jack Nicholson and being Showtime South? But there's no reason why Atlanta, with the culture and entertainment and everything we have here, shouldn't be a prime destination for free agents. Arthur Blank will spend the money. Get it right. And this should be a crown jewel of whatever league they're in there. Ski says they don't fire head coaches. No, that's fine. You're not going to get a first-round pick for him either. So on that note, Kyle says we suck at special teams. I think you'd almost have to improve to suck. They're the worst. It's the worst special teams unit in the NFL. Going back through the numbers, Kyle, if you're just getting here, they are, let me see. Let me go back through these ugly numbers. And on the offensive side of things, they are 30th in yards per punt return. They are 25th in field goal percentage, and they are dead last in yards per kick return. On the defensive side of things, they're actually 9th in punt returns against, because I think Bradley Pinion's actually had a pretty good year in punt returns against. That's a hang time. Like sacks can be a quarterback stat. Punt returns against can be a punter's stat. What's your hang time? Are you directionally where it's supposed to be? Are you kicking away from your coverage, or are you kicking where it's supposed to be? I think Pinion's done a good job. And then they're 32nd in kickoff coverage, dead last again. So in 3 of the 5 categories, They're 30th, 32nd, and 32nd. That's insane, bro. I don't usually throw bros out there. I'm too old for that. I'm a dude guy, from the 80s. Dude. That's insane. 30th, 32nd, and 32nd. Those are different categories. I mean, obviously they're different categories, but I mean, it's not like, okay, I've got a bad receiving core, so I don't have a lot of passing yards. Yes, that makes sense. I'm not only last in passing yards, I'm last in passing per attempt. Yeah, those go together. Kickoff returns and kickoff coverage, those are completely different things. You got to really work at it to be last in both. For God's sakes. For goodness sakes. Ski says, people just be naming anyone head coaches. They don't even do research on the person or know what scheme and personnel they use. Yeah, because you're looking for winners. You're looking at this, your culture change. It almost goes back to, can you win and can that be successful? I don't necessarily care if it fits the personnel, because the personnel can be changed. And I think the Falcons, and if I have to find a coach, this goes back to the conversation we've had with Clint Kubiak, and he does more things under center than Michael Penix. I don't care. If Michael Penix can't go under center, but Clint Kubiak's the guy, I'm not basing my decision on hiring a coach for 70 players because of my third-year quarterback. I'm not doing that. I don't care. I don't believe it anyway. I don't believe that he can't go under center. I just don't believe that. I think they don't put him under center. That he can't go under center, I think, is asinine. Let's see here. Jay, good to see you, Jay. He says, do you think Kirk stays next year? No. No way. He's got a $57 million cap hit. The Falcons save $22 million immediately when they move on from him. If and when there is a regime change, they will have the luxury and the patience of probably 3 years, coming off a team that is not necessarily a playoff contender and is coming off a 6-11, 5-12 type of season. Maybe beat the Saints, maybe beat the Cardinals. That puts you at 6-11. The new person coming in will get a little bit more leash, and they're not going to want to do it with a $60 million quarterback who's 38 years old. So that one. Troy says, yesterday it was the Jimmy and Joes that cost us the games, not the X's and O's. I disagree. I don't think it was a personnel problem, other than why is Jamal Agnew out there still returning punt returns and kicks? That's a personnel problem. That's also a coach's decision. Who's got the best hands on the team? Fair catch it. Just go out there and fair catch it. You'd be better off. Not only are you not getting returning yards, you're also now fumbling. And Agnew, I looked it up, that was his fourth fumble on 40 touches. He's got like 44 now total, but it was like his 42nd return combined between kickoffs and punts. He's got 4 fumbles. He's fumbling the ball every 10 times he touches the ball. Now, you could call that personnel, that Jamal Agnew, but to me, that's a coaching decision to have him out there. If I got a reliever that's blown 10 straight saves and I run him out there for the 11th and he blows it, is that the reliever's fault? Or is that my fault because I'm a moron? It's my fault because I'm a moron. I don't think this was a personnel thing here yesterday, Troy. Not when you beat them in virtually every single category out there in this game yesterday. First downs, rushing yards, passing yards, time of possession. You beat them handily in all of them. One was a fumble. You lost the one fumble led to 7 points. You're last in kickoff returns, and that bit you. You're 30th in punt coverage. That bit you. That's coaching, bro. Side jar. Put $1 in the side jar, and we'll have a big party at the end. Michael says, what can Arthur Blank do? And thank you for the super chat, Michael, and for being a member as well. He says, what can Blank do to get the trust of the fans back in a hurry? Well, luckily, you've got a monopoly of the world's most, not the world's, but the country's most popular product, the NFL. You've got a monopoly on it. So you've got a captive audience. It's why I can charge $20 for a hamburger at Six Flags. You want to eat, you're going to pay $20. You want to watch football, and people do, you're going to watch the Atlanta Falcons. Now, trust back. they're going to keep watching. I made a joke about this yesterday, Michael. It's like Arthur Blank sits back and says, profits are up. Value of the team is up. Everybody in the building is well paid and happy. What's the problem? I'm running a great business. As a business guy, he's got to be pleased as punch, right? Bottom line, all looks good and your employees are all happy. Customers are still lining up to fork over money for you. You think you'd have a hard time, and I said this about Arthur Smith at the time. I don't think you can sell Arthur Smith back to this fan base for a fourth year. I don't think you can sell Raheem Morris back to this fan base either. Now, you have to, while he doesn't exactly rub elbows with the rest of us, you still live in this community. You still live in Atlanta. You have a responsibility as a shepherd of the franchise. I've always said, besides the owner, when we're talking about, people will live and die for these individual players and coaches, and they'll just go to bat for them like they care the same way you do. Guys, this is a job. It's a job for them. The only person that even remotely has the passion that you do might be the owner, and that's questionable. But fans this is your team. And I finally heard it. I've been saying that for years. I finally heard it on Ted Lasso. He invited the fans into watch practice. And they're like, you sure this is a good idea? And he says, it's their team. We're just borrowing it for a little while. So it is. This Atlanta Falcons, it's your team. It's your team, Michael. It's your team, Chris, Rio, Curtis. It's your team. And they're just borrowing it for a little while. So you shouldn't feel all that bad if you don't support some of the people who happen to be wearing the uniforms at that time. I don't think you can sell you on Raheem Morris next year. It's got to be a regime change, and it's got to be somebody with fresh ideas and no ties. You can't bring somebody else. But I won't say that hasn't been here before, but okay, Dan Quinn gets fired. This is something I can see happening. Dan Quinn's having an awful year. He gets fired up in Washington, gets interviewed in Atlanta. That's the kind of crap they've been doing. No. Okay, now if LaFleur comes back, because he's dismissed, and that's not going to happen, but he's been gone 10 years. Maybe, okay. He's been really successful somewhere else. He is a candidate because of what he's done, not because he was with the Atlanta Falcons at one point. What can they do? Bring somebody in that's fresh and hand them the keys and say that Rich McKay is not involved in the coaching search, not involved in the general manager search. That's how. The seven, you told me what this meant, and I forgot. The seven sicko. I forgot what it meant. You told me what this meant, and I forgot your name on this. He says 2026 new uniforms with new culture. They did it with Jerry Glanville, sort of, didn't they? When they went all black. Y'all remember that? That was a Glanville thing, the man in black. He liked to think he was Johnny Cash. I'm not worried about new uniforms as much. These uniforms are fine, and they change them up. I'm worried about making the right decisions and some accountability and not hearing about collaborations and finding a way, not making the same mistake over and over and over again. Younghoe Koo, not Zane Gonzalez, but Jamal Agnew. I'll be a little surprised if Agnew is still on the team by Wednesday. I'll be a little surprised. He didn't. For Raheem Morris, he threw Agnew under the bus. I'm not saying, oh man, he really threw him under the bus. I'm saying for Raheem Morris, blaming a player pretty much for anything is pretty harsh for him. Like Bobby Cox. Bobby Cox only did that once or twice in his career where he would do something publicly. And Jamal Agnew caught some flack yesterday. I'll be a little surprised if he's not cut. New culture, new uniforms. Is this a big thing for y'all? The new uniforms? I really don't. I don't. It's so far down on my list that I don't really think about it that much. Is that something that y'all are interested in? And I'm not really interested in John Gruden. I mean, I see some John Gruden talk. John Gruden ref. Let's just, forget the baggage. Forget all that. What is the last time he coached was 2021, and in Oakland, it had been 10 years since he coached. In Oakland, another franchise with problems. He was 4-12, 7-9, 8-8, and then 3-2 when he got fired. So they're headed in the right direction, but there wasn't anything out there that made you think, oh yeah, man, I got to have this guy. In Tampa, won a Super Bowl in his first year with Tony Dungy's team, and then 7-9, 5-11, 11-5, 4-12, 9-7, 9-7. So, and again, Tampa wasn't exactly the Green Bay Packers or, one of these winning organizations. Tampa and New Orleans and the Falcons are three of the worst organizations in the history of this league. So some of that is relative. Kubiak. That's Jerome. I kind of like that one too. And 10Cam says, with the lawsuit, the lawsuit against the NFL, he ain't coming back to the NFL. Yeah, he's not. He's not. Let's see. I'm really interested in Clint Kubiak and what they've done up in Seattle. How did they do yesterday from an offensive point of view? I'm pretty sure they won, but I didn't even not that scores. I think I went to like football scores because I ended up with a bunch of La Liga teams. Seahawks. I think they played they played the Vikings. The Vikings are bad. Sam Darnold, revenge game. I'm kidding. Efficient. He had a Kirk Cousins-like game. 14 of 26 for 128 yards. They leaned on defense. Who the hell scored touchdowns? Anybody? Or did they just kick a bunch of field goals? I think there was a defensive score in that game. I'm real interested in what Kubiak has done. I would like to find, and no, I'm not bringing Bill Belichick back. And Brandon says, Tampa had no talent. Oakland had problematic players. Atlanta has talent and good character. Brandon, I know it's our own biases speaking, but you're talking about Atlanta is also a team that is lumped into those losing teams. They just are. Atlanta's not considered a crown jewel of a franchise. Oh yeah, this is a great franchise to go where you can just go and with the right coach, they can go and win right away. That's not the perception out there. This is a franchise that has problems and has the second longest streak in the NFL of not going to the playoffs. They've got their own problems too. The Raiders have been to the playoffs since the Falcons. I wouldn't want to be Oakland. I wouldn't trade owners for Oakland, but it's not a guarantee. It's not going to happen anyway. The Raiders are a mesky. I know. Let's see here on Jerome. He says, I think Penix will be back for training camp. I do too. I do too, as far as, out there throwing. I think we'll see him throwing at OTAs. Again, people hear 9 months, even if they hear 12 months, they make it sound like he's in traction for that amount of time. He's not. You can be out walking around within a couple of weeks of ACL surgery. You can be out walking on a brace and moving around, and the arms will work just fine. I can study, I can do all these things. Workout, rehab. The bigger question, the bigger concern for me is the long term. Is how is the structural stability of those knees of his? How long before we don't hold our breath every time he gets sacked? Because it's not like he got hit in the knee when he tore it. So, and Rusty says, Scott, I think you're being way too optimistic with this Penix injury, and that's kind of what we're talking about, Rusty. What I mean by this. Way too optimistic with this Penix injury. I don't think the injury is what will hold Penix back from being a great quarterback. That's where I am with this. Okay. I think if he's destined for greatness, this injury isn't that big a deal. The question for me is he? Does the problems that, the accuracy problems, the footwork problems, and the fragility of him, those are bigger concerns for me than this knee injury. If it wasn't his third, if it was his first, we wouldn't really be thinking that much about it, right? So when I'm talking about his ability to come back and physically work out, the knee injury is not going to stop a lot of things over the course of the next 9 months, 1 year. He's not a big scrambling quarterback. He's not a cornerback. If he loses a 10th on his 40, so what? He's not running anyway. Do I have big concerns about Michael Penix's long-term ability to be the leader of this franchise? Abso-freaking-lutely. And the fragility is part of it. But if he doesn't become that guy, it won't be because he missed a few practices, missed some time in this offseason. So that's where I am on that. Yeah, that's where I am on that one. It's not optimistic with the injury is from a health standpoint, not from an ability standpoint. I hope that I have big concerns about his ability to get out there, perform at a high level, and stay out there. Big concerns on that one. So I haven't been talking about Chip Kelly. I know some of y'all are. I think Chip Kelly's a jerk. I'm not interested in Chip Kelly anywhere near Atlanta on that one. JT says we may need to draft another quarterback. Penix will get a chance in 2026 because he got no first-round pick, and he's on a rookie contract, guaranteed rookie contract. So he's basically guaranteed the job next year unless someone else comes in and says, I flat out don't want him now, you're a backup. And he brings in a bridge guy and drafts somebody later and hopes. But I think Penix is the guy for 2026, and then we'll see. Then we will see. So that's my my thoughts on that. Rusty, the ACL, the partials, there's different grades of the tear on ACLs, and we've seen guys back as far as 6 months, being back out there as quickly as 6 months. And again, it also has to do with the position. What is your game? If he's a quarterback, the ACL isn't nearly as important as a corner. The corner scares me. You lose 2% of your athleticism as a corner. That could be the difference between you being at the top of your league and not playing at all. Those are the best athletes in the world. I'm not going to say a name here because I don't even want to put it out there. But if I have a change of direction running back who relies on making people miss, and he does an ACL, that scares me a lot more than a quarterback who relies on his arm. Shoulders and elbows, those scare me more with quarterback. But there isn't a lot that Penix won't be able to do that he would have been doing within the next 3 months. He can stand there like a statue and make throws, which is a lot of what he was doing in this offense anyway. In 3 months, 4 months, he'll be able to do a lot of stuff with the team. He's not in traction. He's not in a wheelchair. Does he end up being the guy? I don't know. But I'm not necessarily concerned. This is the injury. This is the one. This injury is gonna tank his career. If this injury tanks his career, if that's what it looks like, he never comes back from this injury. It wasn't the injury. I guess that's my point, Rusty. If Penix never becomes the guy, it's not because of this injury. That's, I would say, is my overall point. When we say I'm downplaying it, maybe I am. But it's because I'm not overplaying who I think he is as a quarterback yet. He wasn't playing that great for a variety of reasons. We haven't seen it out of him yet. He's only played, 11, 12 starts? This injury will not be the reason Michael Penix does not succeed. I guess that's where I am on that. On that note, I think we are just about to get out of here. I do want to say thank you to everybody that's come in and given super chats. It means a lot. It helps. Before it's still a little shiny. I haven't using my lights as much lately. This camera's pretty good. That I've kept it a little darker. But Curtis has come in a couple of times. Huge support. Thank you, Curtis. He's also a member. Be a member like Curtis. It means a lot. But Curtis came in a couple of times. Lance also kicking things off early. Rio, always a big supporter of the show. Michael, also a member. to 7 sicko. You'll have to remind me in the comments later what that means because I forgot. And Matt Service is also a member coming in late with a super. He says, as a Gator fan, I said we poached Kiffin from LSU. I'd take Kiffin back in the NFL. I've used him as an example of one of the reasons I was okay with Raheem Morris. The path that Lane Kiffin has strode. I think one of the differences here, though, is he did it as a head coach. He was handed too much too soon. He was arrogant, cocky, and fell flat on his face, and then had to build his way back up from Florida International to didn't Ole Miss hire him right out of there and turned Ole Miss, who's never been to an SEC championship game, into, the SEC championship game is now what, 33 years old, 91, 92, somewhere in there. Never been. That's an amazing feat. It really is. I think he's done a great job. And I was hoping for the same from Morris. Morris was that same guy. Arrogant, too much too soon, fell flat on his face, humbly worked his way back up, but he always did it as a position coach, as a coordinator. And maybe that's the difference. It's hard to learn on the job in the NFL to be a head coach. And a lot of guys fail out at doing it. So, but I can see why Lane Kiffin went. There's not a whole hell of a lot of difference except term limits in college football for the players than the pros now. And term limits meaning you only get to stay in that league for a certain amount of time, but it's free agency every year. I mean, anybody that ever said it wasn't about the money, oh man, it's ruined. It's always been about the money. Now just different people are getting it. This is the kind of thing that's been going on for 50 years. Guys switching for better situations like that. On that note, y'all, again, thank you so much. Chris, coming back in, I know I could talk with y'all forever. Wide receiver is an issue. We need 2 wide receivers. I would take the best player available between wide receiver, corner, and defensive tackle in the second round, and we'll do another mock draft here soon. Need 2 wide receivers. I want 2 corners. I want another linebacker. And you can address a lot of those needs in free agency. The Falcons will have some money to spend if they want to, because yesterday I said, if I'm a new general manager coming in and I want to try and restock draft picks, I might sit out the first round of free agency, knowing I've got some time. And then when Tyler Algier leaves, if Caden Ellis leaves, if let's see, Leonard Floyd is one of those guys, when David Onyemata, when those guys sign new contracts, you might be eligible for a comp pick. I might be able to pick up 3 or 4 comp picks based on losing free agents if I don't go out and spend right away. It's tough to not spend. That money burns holes in these guys' pocket. Brandon, I appreciate you. He says, have a great day, Scott. You put me on Charlie Warner bandwagon. It changed early in the season with that stat. Love and respect your work. Thanks, Brendan. It changed. They are now 4-1. Charlie Warner, thank you for reminding me. Charlie Warner played 62% of the snaps yesterday, and they lost after dominating the running game, dominating the passing game, holding the Jets under 300 yards of total offense. They lost again because they probably got outgained 300 to -5 in special teams. But yeah, they're now 4-1 when Charlie Warner plays at least 60% of the snaps. So thank you, y'all. I am going to get out of here. It's we ran a little late. That's okay. I enjoy the conversation with y'all. I will be back on Wednesday with Nick. Hope to see you then. We'll talk a little bit of Seattle Seahawks. We'll see if any news comes up. I expect there's going to be some transactions here in the next 48 hours. And Jamal Agnew, I think, is going to be on that list. But we'll see. We will see. Appreciate y'all. Have a great rest of your day. Happy December 1st, y'all. Have a good day.